And it looks like that press conference is getting ready to start. Let's take a listen in.
Which includes all of Palm Beach County. I'm joined by my Chief Assistant, Adrian Ellis, who heads my County Court Division covering all the misdemeanors in this circuit, including simple battery. Ms. Ellis performed a thorough review of this case and made the legal and factual conclusions that I will be discussing today. I agree with Ms. Ellis's analysis in her closeout memo, and as State Attorney, I have made the decision that this office will not be filing charges against Corey Lewandowski for battery. We have notified the parties involved in this matter and will make Ms. Ellis's memorandum available to all of you. It's important to note that despite several media reports, this matter was never charged by this. Sorry. It's okay. Are we all good? All right. Sorry, we're good. It's important to note that despite several media reports, this matter was never charged by this office. It was charged by the Jupiter Police Department, which found probable cause that Mr. Lewandowski committed a simple battery against Miss Michelle Fields. As is the normal process, the Jupiter Police Department made a decision based on probable cause to issue a notice to appear to Mr. Lewandowski. Afterwards, the Jupiter Police Department sent our office a case file, and we conducted an independent review to determine whether we would pursue the charges. Jupiter Police Chief Frank Kitzero and the Town Police Department do an outstanding job, and they acted well within their authority to investigate and make an independent charging decision. We agree that probable cause exists for the Jupiter Police Department to have charged Mr. Lewandowski in this case. As prosecutors, however, our standard for filing criminal charges is higher than mere probable cause. We have the burden of proving each case beyond a reasonable doubt. In doing so, a prosecutor must have a good faith basis that the evidence presented will sustain a conviction. While the evidence in this case is legally sufficient for the police to have charged Mr. Lewandowski, it is not strong enough to meet the legal burden of a reasonable likelihood of a conviction. It is unethical for us to file cases when we believe there is not a good faith basis to proceed. Here are some of the facts as stated in Ms. Ellis's closeout memorandum. On March 8th, 2016, news reporter Michelle Fields was covering a campaign event in the ballroom at the Trump International Golf Club in Jupiter. Presidential candidate Donald Trump had just completed a press conference. Afterwards, he left the podium and was moving towards the ballroom exit. He had a number of Secret Service agents attempting to maintain space between him and the public. The full video recording shows Secret Service agents clearing the pathway ahead of Mr. Trump. Specifically, it appears that Ms. Fields was directed to the back of the room along with other members of the media. After initially complying with the directive, Ms. Fields returned to the pathway area and walked directly alongside Mr. Trump, attempting to ask questions of him. It appears, based on the freeze frames from the video recording and an independent photograph taken by a Washington Post photographer, that Ms. Fields brushed or touched Mr. Trump's arm. He then appears to react to Ms. Fields by pulling his arm back and away from her, at which time Mr. Lewandowski reached forward and grabbed Ms. Fields' arm, pulling her away from Mr. Trump. Both Mr. Trump and Mr. Lewandowski then continued toward the exit at the back of the room. After reviewing the video recording, there is no reasonable doubt that Mr. Lewandowski pulled Ms. Fields back as she was attempting to interview Mr. Trump. According to an affidavit submitted by a former FBI agent, when tasked with the protection of a political candidate, Secret Service agents will create a protective bubble. This protective bubble is created to prevent unauthorized individuals from getting too close to the person, regardless of whether or not they are members of the press. More importantly, under these circumstances, it is not uncommon for a candidate's inner circle staff members, known to the agents, to assist in clearing a safe pathway. It should be noted, however, that one agent was positioned directly behind Ms. Fields and appeared to show no concern over her actions. Mr. Lewandowski could have called this agent's attention to her movements before taking action himself if he considered her a threat. In addition, soon after the incident, Mr. Lewandowski publicly denied ever touching Ms. Fields in any way. Although these factors might undermine Mr. Lewandowski's potential defense, they do not outweigh the reasonable hypothesis of innocence based on the real-time facts and circumstances recorded on the video. As stated earlier, law enforcement arrests are based upon probable cause. State prosecution, however, relies upon a good faith basis that sufficient evidence exists to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. This includes consideration of any apparent defenses. Although the facts support the allegation that Mr. Lewandowski did grab Ms. Fields' arm against her will, Mr. Lewandowski has a reasonable hypothesis of innocence. There is insufficient evidence to rebut these defenses. Therefore, although probable cause exists, the state will no-file this case. I'm now available for any questions you may have for me or Ms. Ellis.
There have been
Would you
reports.
talk about whether or not, I'm sorry, Glenn Milberg?
Yeah, hi, Glenn.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Will you talk about whether or not the political atmosphere entered into what your process was, considering this was a simple battery?
Yeah.
case?
Well, as far as our review of the case, it was just like any other case. I do acknowledge that there is international attention to this case, which doesn't exist in just about any other simple battery case. So that's why, we have a press conference like this. But as far as the actual work that was done, the review, the analysis, it's the same as in every case. Brian, you have a question.
There have been reports that you attempted to facilitate a deal with Mr. Lewandowski to publicly apologize. Is that true?
The apology in a case like this obviously would be encouraged. I mean, it's a good thing to have it. We always appreciate when people take responsibility for their actions. But I can tell you that our decision, Ms. Ellis's memorandum and our decision in this case had nothing to do with the existence or non-existence of an apology.
Did you, this is Nick Madigan of the New York Times. Did you speak to Mr. Lewandowski? Did your office interview him before you came to this conclusion?
Well, since Ms. Ellis was in charge of the investigation, I'll turn that specific question over to her.
No,
you
we
speak
did.
with him at any point?
No, we did not speak with Mr. Lewandowski. We spoke with his attorney.
With his attorney?
Yes.
Did you have a personal meeting with him or just over the phone? How did you do that?
Yes, we spoke with him in person as well as over the phone.
Did he try to persuade you not to charge? Did he give any reason?
Yeah,
Trying to persuade you?
well, he came in with what he believed to be the facts of the case. So he wanted to present what he believed to be the facts of the case, and we took that into consideration.
Okay. Did the Jupiter, I'm sorry, just one more. Did the Jupiter Police Department, before they charged him initially, because that happened within 2 days, I think, of the event, did they contact your
No.
office at all? Did they seek any advice?
No.
No.
No?
No.
That was entirely up to them at that point?
Correct.
But they later got in touch with you? Did you have meetings about how to go about this?
The Jupiter Police Department sent over the filing packet
Right.
after the charges were filed. Then, when Ms. Ellis did our own investigation for the office, among other things, she interviewed the lead detective in the case from the Jupiter Police Department. In fact, that lead detective was here in this office for more than an hour and a half.
Kerry Sanders with NBC News.
Yeah, hi, Kerry.
In addition to the photograph, the statements from Ms. Fields and the Washington Post reporter and the videotape that has been released, was there any other physical evidence that you looked at, any other videotapes that we haven't seen, any other photographs that we have not seen?
No, we looked at, obviously there was a photograph of a bruise on her arm that we reviewed. And in terms of anything else that we reviewed, everything else is taken from the actual video surveillance recording.
Does that include-
Still photographs from the freeze frame shots.
Does that include anything where the Secret Service is directing her prior to that you could actually see them?
Absolutely.
What is that?
Yes, sir.
Explain it to me.
That is captured on the video surveillance recording.
And it shows, or we can hear what?
You can't necessarily hear because Mr. Trump is leaving, making his way to the exit, so you can't actually hear what's actually being said. You hear noise in the ballroom, but as they are making their way out, what is captured on the video is her, along with other journalists, media, being directed to the back of the ballroom.
And you spoke to that Secret Service agent to confirm that that's what he was telling her to do?
No, we did not.
Did you speak to the Associated Press?
Yes, sir.
Can I ask, has anyone spoken with Mrs. Fields today, and does she support this decision, or would she rather have gone forward with the prosecution?
We both spoke with Ms. Fields today, and I'll let you speak to her about her thoughts, but it was clear to us she was disappointed by the decision.
How so? What kind of message did she convey to you to make you think that?
I mean, she wanted a prosecution to go forward.
What about the apology? There was a story that if she were to get an apology, she would step back and not ask for you to prosecute.
There was no deal where we're going to drop charges in exchange for an apology. But as I said earlier, in a case like this, we do encourage an apology. We think it's a good idea. And I think that had an apology been given at the beginning of all this, we could have avoided the whole criminal justice process for this matter.
Has there been an apology since that you're aware of?
Well, I know that they were working on one, and then they showed me a draft of an apology. I don't know the attorneys for the defendant.
Can you tell us what it said?
I would be paraphrasing it, but it was a short apology, and it's up to them to reach out to Ms. Fields and send it to her.
When did they show you that? Remember?
It's
Earlier
recently.
Earlier this week.
Did you speak to Ms. Fields as part of your investigation?
Absolutely.
At some length, I mean?
Yes, I spoke with Mrs. Fields on 3 occasions.
Adriana, Terry Parker with Channel 25.
Yes, ma'am.
When you saw the photograph of Ms. Fields' bruises, did it appear to you that they were from the incident in question?
Well, the initial photos that we received were a couple of days old because it was a delayed reporting, obviously. And when I met with the detective in my office afterwards, I asked him to reach out to see if he could obtain a photograph that would have been taken more closer in time. And she had taken a photograph on her iPhone that same evening, and there was really nothing there. So it was an investigation that I wanted him to do just to make it a more thorough and complete investigation. But the photographs that we have from her, from actually the Jupiter Police Department, do show bruising. But, you know, it wasn't anything that was anything remotely close to what we got from her the actual night that it happened.
Her phone did not show any?
Her phone did not show any bruising, no. It wasn't until the photographs that the detective would have picked up a couple of days later.
But that's just a quality of photo issue. That's not that there was no injury.
Well, that could be what happens when someone's bruised, you know.
The bruise comes up later.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Scout and WFR, ma'am. Can you talk about that protective bubble that we see in the memo here, and kind of what you say that she did that got kind of getting into that bubble there?
You know, we have a video, the full video, and I think you may have it, but we have it. And I think, Brian, are we going to be showing that afterwards? Yeah, we're going to show you the video, the full video afterwards, and I think you'll be able to see for yourself what we mean by it.
If you can explain though what your findings were with watching that video.
Well, the press was directed towards the back. There's this bubble, and she makes her way beyond the press area and gets right next to Mr. Trump and actually makes slight contact with Mr. Trump. And you can see that he sort of recoils, and that's when Mr. Lewandowski comes and grabs her arm.
Mr. State Attorney, would you say because of that in your opinion, Donald Trump has a legitimate claim for a simple battery?
Well, it's our belief that what we saw in the video, that any contact was incidental, and that is not contemplated under the simple battery statute, which requires an intentional and unwanted touching. George?
How common is it for a police agency to file a misdemeanor battery charge like this and your office to decline to prosecute it?
It happens. It's not that uncommon. We review misdemeanors that come in, charges that are filed by police agencies, because we ethically have to make a decision whether we have a good faith basis to prosecute or whether there's reasonable doubt. If we know in advance that reasonable doubt exists and we're not going to be able to get a conviction or even beyond a judgment of acquittal by the judge, we can't ethically file those charges.
So, I mean, what would you guess, 10% of the time, half the time? How often is it that a police agency brings a charge like that and you guys decline to prosecute?
It's often. I mean, you know,